across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Welcome. It is the home of Common Sense. Thank you to Alex. She's back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So what do we got? Donald Trump saying he's very disappointed in Keir Starmer from blocking him from using Diego Garcia to carry out those strikes on Iran. The US president said the PM's initial refusal to let US forces use the Chagos Island base was unlike anything that had happened between our two countries before. It's a beautiful, beautiful difference. There it is. We'll have more on that in a few moments. Also this afternoon, 3 American fighter jets shot down by Kuwait in a friendly fire incident this morning, according to US Central Command. Video shows US F-15E Strike Eagles spiraling down with its engine on fire. This is around about 6 miles from a local airbase. We'll have more on that story. And Keir Starmer's popularity has hit a new low. How many new lows can he keep hitting? After Labour's defeat in Gorton and Denton by-election, a new survey puts his net approval at 49, the worst since taking office and lower than the ratings recorded by Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson or Theresa May. Wow, I mean, the bar was already high on that one. We'll have more on all of those stories, everything that you need to know. We'll bring you that press conference, a statement in Parliament, I should add, from the Prime Minister around about 3:30 this afternoon. That could be key to quite a lot. And, of course, your comments along the way. Very simply, 0344 499 1000. You can leave a voice note there as well, or you can message 87222. Should the UK get involved in Iran? We'll open the lines on that one immediately. The answer is simple. No is the answer. The UK can't control its own borders, for goodness sake. So why would we want to get involved in an Islamic war on the other side of the world? And by the way, those two stories are indeed connected. I've got the name, as I said to Alex, of Tony Blair rattling around in my head in Iraq and weapons of mass destruction and the whole sorry mess of that era of which we are still paying the price. So, cast your mind back to Saturday. This is how it all started.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world.
That was the Trump statement that we woke up to on Saturday. We now have mass bombings going on all over the Middle East. This will affect us in lots of different ways. Filling up your car with petrol might be very expensive in the next few days after that Saudi oil refinery was hit. The Ayatollah might be dead, but this is just the beginning. From Lebanon to Kuwait, Cyprus to Saudi, no place is safe out there. The new Gulf War has begun. Even that phrase, friendly fire, has returned to the lexicon in the past few hours. Should the UK get involved in Iran? 0344 499 1000. Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper said it's not in Britain's interest to join the full campaign, although our government did relent at the weekend over allowing the American military to use our air bases. On that very point, on Saturday, I think it was Sunday in fact, Keir Starmer said this.
The only way to stop the threat is to destroy the missiles at source, in their storage depots, or the launchers which are used to fire the missiles. The United States has requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose.
Specific and limited defensive purpose. Hours after making that announcement, an Iranian attack drone struck an RAF base in Cyprus. It is happening. The attacks at the weekend didn't come out of nowhere, of course. There was a build-up for a few weeks. Trump had threatened it and Israel had always desired it. This was always going to happen. Of course, it's hugely complex. We all know that. Many nations around the world still mulling over the implications of whether loyalty comes in words or physical military assistance. Some were quick to show their condemnation. France, goodness me, wasted no time over there at the United Nations to fully condemn Trump's actions. No surprise there. But it leaves us with the inevitable question: should the United Kingdom get involved beyond what we have done? And of course there are clear and obvious dangers if we do, and some would argue there are greater dangers if we don't. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word with Freddie Gray, Deputy and US Editor of The Spectator. Afternoon to you, Freddie.
Good afternoon.
Nice to have you with us again. I mean, where do we go with this? I mean, at the weekend, what we saw was sort of what I think we expected at some point. Nonetheless, it doesn't make it any less shocking when you see and open the or turn the TV on, open the newspapers on Saturday morning to see what has been taking place.
No, exactly. I mean, I think every Friday this year I'd heard rumours from Washington that this Friday was going to be the day, the night that it was going to happen. But certainly on Friday afternoon, it seemed as though all the pawns were in place to strike. And and it's just an absolute bombardment of news over the weekend, and a bombardment of a lot of places in the Middle East.
Yeah. This is inevitably the shape of things to come, Freddie, right? I mean, this isn't over. Some say it's just begun.
No, it's not over. I mean, the reason why Donald Trump likes to strike at the weekend is because he hopes that the situation will calm by the time the markets open on Monday. I don't think that has been achieved. The impression I'm picking up from inside DC is that there is actually quite widespread panic about the fact that the plan, there may not even have been a particularly good plan, and that the situation is rapidly deteriorating.
So in that respect, I mean, Trump, naturally, Democrats are obviously always going to have a pop at Donald Trump when he carries out an action. There are some Republicans saying, hang on a second, this needed a little bit more, a bit more thought beforehand and certain permissions. What's the truth of that?
Well, I think there was a lot of hope over the weekend that, similar to the Venezuela operation, there would be some sort of masterful intelligence reveal would sort of eventually pan out, and it would seem that the US had somebody on the inside in Iran, that there was a takeover plan in place. It doesn't sound at the moment as though that's the case. And so, yeah, the truth of it is, I think, that Trump boxed himself in by moving this massive deployment of assets to the region, the biggest since the Iraq War. And he felt he had to strike for various reasons. But what he likes is quick warfare, quick declarations of victory. At the moment, that doesn't look likely. Although he is very skilled in finding off-ramps, as he calls them. We'll see in the next few days if that's something he can do.
So the Supreme Leader is dead, but of course that's not enough for full regime change.
No, and in fact, I mean, my understanding, fairly limited understanding, I should say, of the Iranian leadership is that it is well prepared for decapitations, and that there are various systems in place so that the regime can keep going no matter who gets taken out at the top.
Yeah.
I think, obviously, it was a spectacular strike to get the Ayatollah Khomeini and, it seems, 40 other senior commanders. That is obviously a huge blow to the regime, but it's not a regime-ending strike. Yeah. And this is the problem with trying to, conduct regime change from the air. It's less dangerous in terms of losing troops yourself, but it is also extremely unpredictable and hard to do. You can't remote control revolution.
Yeah, there is. I mentioned at the beginning, Freddie, the Iraq War and Blair and all that goes with it. It's not a direct equivalence, we know that, but there are sort of echoes naturally. A big war in the Middle East, the Americans leading it, the British sort of tacitly assisting in a very limited fashion. Naturally, in terms of how we as Brits consider our involvement or potential involvement, it's inevitable we are going to think back to those days and, of course, the carnage that ensued afterwards.
I think we have a very different government, actually. I mean, a lot of people think Starmer is continuity Blair and so on. I don't think he is really. And I think he is also thinking, it's clear, about Muslim voters. He's thinking about how the left will be affected, the sort of Islamo-gauchist, Islamo-left alliance that is very potent in politics, as we saw in Gorton and Denton last week. He's thinking about how that will react to Britain getting too strongly involved on the side of the Americans. And senior Labour figures are thinking about that. And that's a very different equation to what Tony Blair had back in the Iraq War, which was far more sort of straightforward. We've got to present this as in Britain's national interest, even if it wasn't.
Yeah. Nigel Farage for Reform, who wants to be the next Prime Minister, of course, had a very different view on things. Let's have a listen.
A British sovereign base is under attack. Are people nervous about getting involved in foreign wars, given the extent of 20 years in Afghanistan and then giving it all back to the Taliban? Of course they are, and I understand that. But as I say, this is very different to the Iraq decision. Very, very different. Because, yes, they do pose a threat to the whole of the Middle East, to the world, and indeed to us as well. And it's a cause that I've personally felt very strongly, for many, 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 many years. The world will be a better place without these ghastly people.
And we all tend to agree with the basic sentiment of that, Freddie. I just wonder whose view, Keir Starmer's or Nigel Farage's, speaks for the British people.
Well, probably more Nigel Farage's, judging from the opinion polls generally, and on this issue, I think. But I think even Farage, and it's similar, his position is similar to Vice President J.D. Vance in America, which is to say, yes, we've learned the lessons of Iraq and the endless wars there, but we don't want to overlearn those lessons. And that essentially is a fudge. Because, yes, this is a different war to Iraq. Yes, all the factors are far different. But the same basic question as far as British people are concerned is, are we going to get sucked into a conflict that could be extremely complicated, expensive, bloody, cause massive waves of immigration, cause terror threats to accelerate and increase? Are these things going to happen? And that is something that we had to deal with because of Iraq, and it could be something to do with Iran. So just saying over and over again, this is not Iraq, while maybe true, for, I think, British voters, I think it's, but are the risks that we experienced as a result of Iraq, and Syria and Libya, are they going to happen again?
Yeah. Well, we're asking the question this afternoon, should the UK get involved in Iran? 0344 499 1000. Freddie Gray is with us, Deputy and US Editor at The Spectator. Let's move on to a more domestic story, Freddie. I think the way into this is to get a brief reminder of what happened last Thursday.
Spencer, Hannah, Catherine, the Green Party, 14,980. I hereby declare that Hannah Catherine Spencer is duly elected Member of Parliament for the Gorton and Denton constituency.
And, of course, Freddie, a right royal kicking for Labour to boot. Keir Starmer's approval rating has now dropped to a new low. I didn't think it'd go any lower, but apparently there was another notch below.
Yeah, he is spectacularly unpopular, and you don't just have to look at the polls, just talk to anyone. I cannot find, and I have strong Labour friends who just loathe him now. I cannot find anyone who thinks he's doing a good job, who thinks he's an effective Prime Minister, because he so clearly isn't. And what's obvious is that he won the last general election because of who he wasn't. He wasn't the Tory party. He has presided over an administration that has made so many U-turns, has no clear direction. It seems to be a sort of shadow government in some ways, at a time when Britain is in serious trouble on a number of fronts, where there's no economic growth, where we have a huge immigration problem. He is not the leader that Britain needs, and yet we are stuck with him. And I think what's interesting with Gordon Denton is a lot of this Labour talk that the logical way for them to go now is to go left, because that's where the votes are. But is that a way to win a general election? No, I would say not. And in fact, by going in that direction, he would only do what Labour were talking about in the run-up to Gordon and Denton, which is empower reform. So Labour find themselves in a terribly difficult position, because they wanted to say, if you don't vote for us, you'll get Farage. Now they have this, if you don't vote for us, you might get some sort of left alliance with us. You might get all sorts of other permutations. The Labour are in huge trouble. And the sadness for everyone is that they can't be booted out soon.
Yeah. It seems, just looking at one of the polls on this, Freddie, nearly half of Labour voters, 47%, would consider voting Green. I mean, I want to start eating my own face when I read stories like that. I don't know who would vote when you look at this mess that is Zach Polanski's idea of how to run a... I mean, it's just all... It's horrendous, it's horrific, it's terrifying. But apparently 47% of current Labour voters would consider voting Green. 21% might back reform. Now, based just on those numbers, that would suggest Keir Starmer's best advice would be to go more to the left, even though, you know, historically that's never been a great way to win elections.
Well, and if the vote becomes split in a kind of bipolar way, it's an interesting question. Are there more votes in the left Green Labour coalition or a Reform Tory coalition? And at the moment, the polls look like it's a Labour Green coalition. However, as a general election comes closer, a lot of people will start to think a bit more realistically about what having the Green Party in power might actually mean for their finances, might actually mean for the future of the country. And I think you'll see them shying away from that vote. So again, are Labour wise to tack left? It might seem that way now, but thinking about a general election, it seems very risky.
Yeah. Freddie, stay with us. Loads more still to come. Loads of other stories as well. 0344 499 1000. Some comment from you. Norman in Hertfordshire says, Mr. Collins, the European nations condemning the actions of the US and President Trump. Will this strengthen Trump's desire to pull the US out of NATO and leave Europe to fend for itself? This would be a disaster for the European Union. And Jeff says on X, I'm a Republican, I'm a Trump supporter, but no, the UK should not get involved in this. Too many horrendous and lethal lessons from the past. There is nothing in this for the UK. King Stephen says, Ian Collins sounded like a leftist surrender monkey today. Well, apart from the bloke I just quoted, who's a Republican and a Trump supporter, who thinks exactly the same thing. It's not football, mate. It's not left or right. If you have to be one, only idiots think that way. Don't think that way. Don't be one of those, Stephen. You're better than that, mate. You can divide it whatever way you like. Should we, in any way, further our involvement so far? We've allowed America to use our air bases. That probably goes further than many other countries would at the moment. We've got a statement from Starmer a little later this afternoon in Parliament. Will that put any meat on the bones? And does the US and even Israel need support from elsewhere in terms of the military? 0344 499 1000. Lines are open. You can voice note or call on that number. This is Talk.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in third place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, what your gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Kenny says, for what it's worth, I'm another Trump-supporting right-winger who doesn't think we should get involved. That said, Paul makes this point on messages with this point. Of course the UK should get involved. It will help all those young people suffering from anxiety issues by installing teamwork qualities and confidence. Maybe it's all down to that. Freddie Gray is with us from The Spectator, looking at the big stories of the day, including this one, Freddie. Reform MP Robert Jenrick, who released information today about the Chancellor. Of course, he teased this over the weekend. I've got an amazing story about Rachel Reeves. Stand by, I shall be releasing it 8:30 on Monday morning, and true to his words, he did. 8:30 on the dot, Jenrick released this video.
Here in Leeds, where Rachel Reeves is the MP, 1 in 4 aren't working. Now, you'd think the person in charge of the economy would be focused on fixing that. Instead, she's been hanging out with the man she describes as her friend, Arshan Katana.
Pleasure to be here with you this evening.
A man who shared a military video, which also glorified terrorists from 2 terror groups, who said that those who speak against Islam are an evil gang who he will help to destroy, who's hosted preachers at his Leeds mosque with vile views.
Well, that was the video, Freddie. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever way you look at it, most people never heard of Arshan Katana. But nonetheless, you know, Jenrick gave it a little bit of meat on the bones there. Is this serious? I mean, look, I'm not defending Rachel Reeves. If she's hanging around with people like this, she needs to have a word with herself, clearly. It's quite serious stuff. But does this land outside of Westminster, this story?
I'd say it does, absolutely. I think Robert Jenrick is not known for being likable, but he is known for being effective.
Yeah.
And he's particularly effective on social media. I mean, he proved this when he was sort of running this kind of counterinsurgency against Kemi Badenoch as a Tory figure. But now he's in Reform, and attacking Labour on this is exactly what Reform and the right should be doing. I mean, you have a government. We had a picture of Angela Rayner surrounded by local Muslim men in the run-up to the general election. This is a really difficult area for Labour because they really are worried about losing Muslim votes, particularly to the left and to the Green Party, and that's just going to accelerate, and to independence, to Gaza independence and so on. I think it's a smart bit of politics. People might call it grubby or you know, clickbaity or so on, but I mean, that is how politics works.
I didn't think it was any of those things. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, whilst this person may not be known to the masses, it certainly is now, and I guess the next time Rachel Reeves is giving a question, either at some kind of press conference or it could be something that comes up in PMQs, this is going to get raised. Why are you hanging around with people like this?
Well, exactly, and you say he's not known. I mean, he wasn't known until this, but he should be known.
Yeah,
if he has influence over the Chancellor, we should know who he is, what he stands for, and so on. And there should be far more exposés of the relationships between Labour politicians and these local Islamic leaders and what exactly they stand for. This doesn't have to be, you know, Islamophobic or anti-Muslim. It's just about how voting works in very heavily Muslim areas and how Labour works with the way that system works.
And this story, Channel migrants, never out of the news. The number crossing the Channel in small boats once again at an all-time high when compared to this time last year. Let's have a listen to the Home Secretary.
For years, smuggling gangs have run illegal and deadly small boat channel crossings. Their pitch to migrants was the false promise that if you cross our border illegally, you can stay here. Today, we have dealt a blow to those gangs. In August, the government struck a historic agreement with the French government. Now, 8 weeks later, the first forced removals of small boat migrants are underway. In return, we will soon accept the first legal migrants into this country, following strict security and eligibility checks. When I became Home Secretary, I said I will do whatever it takes to secure our borders. Today marks an important and historic first step.
Freddie, I don't know whether it goes from just embarrassment to laughter or laughter to embarrassment. And in fairness, this predates Labour. We all remember Sajid Javid when he was Home Secretary, and the various others, Priti Patel, Braverman, goodness knows who else, that followed, all making similar promises. There was the current Home Secretary not that long ago saying, no, we've got it all sorted, don't worry, everything's fine and dandy. It clearly isn't. Nothing these people do is ever really going to get to grips with this story.
No, and it's interesting that the rhetoric or the headline seeking becomes more desperate. I think saying that right to remain is going to go sounds good. It sounds punchy. But most people, again, people reacting to politicians, they're going to say, well, I've heard similar language from Tory Home Secretaries, from Labour Home Secretaries. I just don't believe that you're going to do anything about it. And what's happening with the actual numbers? Are they going down significantly? Some people argue they are, but not anything like the decline from the peaks that people want to see from their electorate. And that is again why the Labour Party and the Tory Party on immigration, they can say all the right things, but people just are not buying what they're saying.
Yeah, and that tipping point, that's gone now, isn't it? I mean, this isn't their territory, really, is it? It's not in their DNA. They don't, of all the things that Labour politicians care about, this doesn't make the top 20. So I sense we'll be talking about this in months, right the way up to the next election. Listen, Freddie, great to have you on with us. Freddie Gray, he is, of course, the Deputy and US Editor of The Spectator. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. Becca says, no, we shouldn't support another war that will fail, like Iraq and Afghanistan. If people think the cost of living is bad now, just wait for a few weeks, says Becca. This one from Jim, who says Ron DeSantis, who couldn't be more right-wing, is against this invasion. Don't think he's a leftist surrender monkey either. This one from Kath, who says, should we get involved? Well, how many times do we let them bomb us in Cyprus? Yeah, I mean, they are literally the questions. I mentioned right at the beginning about not being able to control our own borders. And I said there is a connection to this. There absolutely is. Because if you're bringing over hundreds on a weekly basis, and look at the weather, by the way, you wait for the next few days, the weather, it's going to be 15, 16 degrees and very calm over there on the channel. Those numbers will rise again. These are men, many coming from Middle Eastern countries, possibly even from Iran. We don't know anything. Just think about this. There's a war going on, okay? The West, by which I mean America, along with Israel, with some assistance from this country, are involved in this war. And others, to a greater or a lesser extent. And at the same time, we invite 1,000 23-year-old men, some from Iran, to come over without any documentation, not even their name, no idea of their true nationality, their background at all. I mean, join the numbers on this one. That's how dangerous it is. So, no, I don't want to get involved just yet. And certainly, when I look back at our last endeavours, in my lifetime, really, we've had two cracks at this over there in the Middle East, Afghanistan and Iraq, on more than one occasion. And just have a look at how they have ended. Should we get involved? Does that make you somehow, as one person said earlier, some sort of mad old lefty? Because you might go, do you know what? Let's concentrate on protecting our borders. So from today, emergency measures, nothing comes across the channel. I mean, they should have done this years ago. From today, nothing comes across the channel specifically because of this war. Let's protect ourselves, protect our own borders, and give ourselves and our kids a little bit of a future, even if it only feels that way for about 5 minutes. Because you have to remember, Keir Starmer is the Prime Minister still. 0344 499 1000. Lines are open. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So much comment coming through on this. We will go to your phone calls shortly as well. We know what is happening. We know what happened at the weekend. Where does this story go next? And what about the UK? Should we get involved in this? I mean, we are, to an extent, involved in the sense that Mr. Starmer has allowed permission for American military to utilise bases of ours. We know what happened a little while after Starmer announced that. And, of course, we had the issue with the drone in Cyprus on an RAF base there. Let's speak to Professor Anthony Glees, security intelligence expert. Anthony, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. I mean, I said to our last guest, it is inevitable as Brits, I suppose, and maybe the wider Western world, but let's just concentrate on us for the moment. That when we talk about the Middle East and wars, we are always going to think Iraq, we're always going to think Afghanistan.
I mean, we are in a total mess, I'm afraid, Ian. We risk falling between every single stool there is. We've clearly alienated President Trump. We know that we've alienated Prime Minister Netanyahu, and we're clearly the wrong side of the Iranians too, because they fired a Shahed drone at RAF Akrotiri. Luckily, it only did minor damage, so we're told, but damage is damage. So we are in a very weak place, and I think you and I could debate the reasons for that, but the reality is we are in a very weak place. And we do have a Prime Minister who I'm personally sure is he's a very decent man, and I'm sure a very competent lawyer and all of that. But he doesn't know how to develop a political line and then stick to it. So 48 hours ago, it was very clear this was an Israeli-led Israel-US enterprise to get rid of the Ayatollahs. And we said, well, that's what you want to do, but we don't like it, and you're not going to use Diego Garcia, you're not going to use RAF Fairford in order to carry out this, because we're not in a position to get involved in another Libya, another Iraq, another Afghanistan. That's just the fact of the matter. 48 hours later, we say, of course, you're more than welcome to use RAF Fairford and Diego Garcia. And yes, we're delighted the Ayatollah-in-Chief has gone. But I promise you, Ian, this is going to be a period of great chaos, and now is not the time to have somebody who wavers. We shouldn't forget Nigel Farage was utterly opposed to the Iraq war in 2003, utterly opposed to the Libyan intervention in 2011. He now says we should get in on the act here, as does Kemi Badenoch. But, it's like telling somebody with only one leg that they ought to train to be an Olympic hurdler. We can't do it.
Yeah. Do the Americans and the Israelis want us to help any more than this idea of having permission to use air bases and the like? Are they asking for, as far as we can ascertain, for additional physical military support?
Well, the USA has us by the short and curlies. Israel less so, but I think one's got to understand what looks exceedingly like the truth when it comes to understanding what this war was. It was a war of opportunity that Netanyahu sold Trump. He said at this given hour, this Saturday, they all congregate together at Khamenei's compound and have a big chinwag. And we know about this. We're able to get them there. For all we know, the Mossad even organized this meeting, because we know they're as smart as a sack full of monkeys. So, and Trump listened. This is a man who spent the whole of last year saying he wanted the Peace Prize, who's saying no more foreign wars, no more American boots on the ground. We're fed up with this. We won't do it. Now he is into his second war of intervention. And it's not a war. I don't think we believe that the Israeli version that this had to be a preemptive strike, because President Trump has himself told us after the last strike last June against Iran, its nuclear building capacity had been obliterated.
Yeah, he did.
His word. And Iran was down on its uppers following the riots. So, you know, Trump was sold a pup by Israel. And my worry is that what looks increasingly like being a regional war is going to affect us. We've got 300,000 Brits in the area. 100,000 of those Brits have already applied to be flown back to Britain from the Gulf. So we are in it. You know, we've got to protect our sovereign bases in Cyprus, no question about that. But did we want to be here? Should we have been here? I'm afraid I doubt it. But we are where we are.
Indeed. And Anthony, as far as you can tell, are there any intelligence at the moment to suggest that other countries are willing to step up and offer physical military assistance?
Well, I think the indications are that the E3, that is the UK with France and the Federal Republic of Germany, will work to defend our common E3 interests. And that also means the interests of our big partner, the United States of America. The problem is that if this war turns into an Iraq-style war, that is to say, where the only way you can get rid of the regime of the Ayatollahs, you know, the idea of cutting off the head of the snake sounds wonderful. You can sell it to Trump, get rid of the head like you did in Venezuela, the rest collapses. There are scores of other Ayatollahs out there. This is 50% of Iran is Islamists. They're the fanatics you were dealing with in your previous item on terror in the UK. They will do anything other than capitulate. Unless American boots are on the ground in Iran, this is going to run and run and run. It will be a forever war.
Yeah.
Now, weaken us, you know, the government's plans for economic growth, the price of oil, interest rates coming down, all those things out of the window. And it is desperate. And I feel actually very sorry for all of us ordinary Brits in this country, because we are leaderless. Wherever we look, we are leaderless.
And do you sense then, Anthony, I think you just sort of answered it there, that this is, because we know that Trump likes the short, sharp shock thing, you know, get in, sort it all out, cut the head off the snake, as you said, and then leg it back to the Oval Office, job done, and he can claim another war that he solved. Is it going to be like that, or do you think this really is something that, you know, the long haul in terms of what he needs to do, as well as the implications for the wider world?
It is absolutely the long haul, because in attacking the regime of the Ayatollahs, you are attacking the idea of Shia Islamism. And Shia Islamism is a kind of global phenomenon. It's not just in Iran is the base, but its tentacles extend, as I say, even here to the UK. And how do you get rid of it unless you destroy the whole shebang? And that's not just the leadership. In Venezuela, you know, Trump thought he'd come up with the ideal solution. You get rid of Maduro and you use American dollars to bribe Maduro's fans and friends, and they turn into American allies. You can't do that with Iran. These people believe in martyrdom. I mean, it's what they said about the Grand Ayatollah himself.
Yeah, he wasn't killed. He was martyred.
He wasn't killed. He was martyred. Yeah. You know, up there with all the virgins. This is a completely impossible situation.
Indeed.
I fear Trump has bitten off more than he can chew, and we're caught between his teeth.
Yeah, Anthony, on that point, thank you. Always great to have you on, Professor Anthony Glee, security and intelligence expert. Let's put some of that to Nihat Ghorbrani, anti-regime Iranian journalist. Nihat, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. I mean, Mr. Glee's there. The professor was just saying, you know, they've cut the head off the snake. The Ayatollah has gone. The supreme leader is no more. But there's dozens more that are willing to take his place and keep this thing going. What do you say?
Yeah, actually 50% of the Islamists in Iran, it's number we can actually put on UK. We can say 50% of Islamists are living in UK, but not in Iran. lots of Iranian people, you know, the Islamic Republic supporters are just 3% of population in Iran, not 50%. 50% is really big number. 80%, they are in Iran. Last 3 years ago, they actually voting for Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, and they saying we actually we trust him for Democrat election. But if someone, he is actually the Professor Glass, he's well educated, but I think he's not educated about Iran and Iranian situation. We have lots of ayatollahs, we have lots of mullahs in Iran, but when situation it's ongoing right now, it's continue, it's not going to be the mullahs stay in power. The Iranian just waiting for Crown Prince announcement to go to the street and take over all the, you know, building. We are not Islamists. We are not even Muslim. We are not even some, you know, 50%. If you're saying 50% of, you know, Iranian population are Islamists, it's mean to me as an ex-Muslim, 50% of terrorists living in the country.
Yeah.
This is
so give us then, Niak, your reaction as to what you imagine the average Iranian at the weekend when America and Israel came in and they bombed and took the life of the supreme leader, in inverted commas. So he's gone. What do you think the average Iranian is thinking right now? Will they be jubilant and celebrating?
I doesn't have any connection with my family, my own family, since actually US and Israel hit the Ayatollah and IRGC bases. My sister, early morning, my sister called me and said, finally, President Trump keep his word and he start rescuing us. You know, this is my closest family member who said that to me, and I have lots of connection with the Iranians as I'm you know, because of my activity. I'm a journalist, I'm an activist. Lots of Iranian people send me the video from Iran. They celebrating, they are super happy, they have a hope. You know, some people coming in the, you know, in the show. I was yesterday in a show, and I'm asking some interviewer, and asking them, why you never asking the, you know, your guests, why you never asking who is the next, who is the people, which person actually people inside Iran chanting his name. If you say that, if you show that, if you're saying all the people around the country, call one name, means to you, British government and, you know, Western country can trust, can talk to someone who represent Iranian people. And if you have someone, you can't anymore think about, you know, Libya, Iraq, or Afghanistan.
So based on all of this, Pahlavi, that name that keeps coming up, how long before he becomes the leader of Iran? Can you put an imaginary kind of time frame on that?
You know, he since 47 years, he was fighting against the Islamic Republic. He was the first real opposition against the Islamic Republic. When I was in Iran, I don't have any idea the Shah of Iran have a son. You know, wow. The Iranian government, the Islamic Republic, trying, you know, poisoning our brain with lie to say this family, they destroy Iran, they, you know, steal everything from Iranian people, you know. But thanks to all the activists, thanks to Crown Prince himself, he working hard to educating Iranian people. He's actually people are around him and working with him. They was against him, But right now, they trust him, they working with him, and you know, they after 47 years now, since 6 years, he became most popular, and all Iranian people saying, okay, one time we trust someone, and now they actually leave us alone, and they going for what they have interest on. But Crown Prince always staying with us and supporting us, and right now, lots, even in village, writing on, you know, everywhere, Javid Shah means long live the king. But still, Crown Prince is self saying we believe in democracy and free election.
So you believe that most Iranians, just a final point, we have to be quick, Niak, but most Iranians, you think, support what Israel and America did at the weekend?
Absolutely yes, absolutely yes. They chanting thank to Bibi Netanyahu and thank to Trump. My entire family all happy. Iranian people showing they actually put in the footage, they dancing, and we behalf of them we are dancing here. Iranian inside Iran and diaspora are happy and thankful.
Well, we hope whatever happens can happen as quickly and as peacefully as possible, of course. Niak, thank you for your time, sir. Really appreciate that. Niak Gorbani, he's an anti-regime Iranian journalist and activist. Thank you to him. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. Should the UK get involved in a more military sense? What are your thoughts on that? Lines are open. This is Talk.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in third place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, what your gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
One here, no name given. Ian Collins, voice of reason. Absolutely spot on. Voice of the common man. Spot on with the explanation as to why the UK should not get involved. The Middle East conflicts have not gone well for the UK in the past. Iraq war was the turning point for us. Following an influx of refugees, we should concentrate on protecting UK borders now. You definitely don't have to be a mad lefty to have those opinions. Thank you, Ian, for the show. Thank you. Doesn't say who it's from, but words appreciated. This is Kieran, who's in Manchester. Kieran, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just on the debate as to whether we should be getting involved in Iran or not. My understanding of it is that our main sort of objection to the regime is the oppressive way of life that they're sort of putting across people. But I think the hypocrisy of it is that we are indirectly or directly promoting that way of life in this country with the illegal migration that we're letting happen.
Yep, fair point.
It just seems really counterproductive to go over there, spend money that we haven't got, munitions that we haven't got.
Yeah.
I don't really feel that we've got much to offer it other than palling up to the US. And I'm a veteran myself. I fought in Afghanistan.
Got it.
And I know roughly what our sort of military capacity is, and I don't think we add any value to it other than sort of kissing up to the Americans.
Yeah, and I do wonder whether they, it's very much Israel and America's campaign at the moment. I wonder whether they even require the help of anyone else.
Yeah, I don't think that they do, and for what it's worth, I'm not a big fan of Keir Starmer, but I half respected his decision to say no at first. Whatever his motivations were for that, whether that's fear of backlash through what's in the UK or whatever his thought process was, but then to U-turn that quickly and then to see the consequences of it so quickly, it's undermined what did look like a relatively strong stance to start with.
Yeah, it's a good point, Kieran. Thank you very much indeed for that. This one from Anne in Surrey. We are already in the second stages of a civil war, and a war between Islam and Christianity is going to happen whether we like it or not. Pick a side. Well, some would argue that the war is Islam and Judaism, if you consider literally the division of the Iranian leadership as we knew it up until the weekend, and the Israeli leadership. So in that respect, yeah, I wonder. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Mark in Manchester. Mark.
That speech out of Keir Starmer, Jesus, he's a fool, man. He should have let him go at the start. All that's going to do is cause pure hassle for him with Trump, because you know what's going to happen in a couple of weeks? He's going to put some more tariffs on us, on our services and all that. Keir Starmer, get your resignation letter in, lad. We're sick of you. Let's have another idiot in there.
Well, maybe. I'd like there to be not an idiot in there. Did you see the deputy leader of the Green Party, who was out there kind of marching with the Tehran campaigners at the week? I mean, this is what some people voted for last week. I don't know what kind of supercharged half-wit you'd have to be. I'd imagine that Hannah Spencer, who's the new MP over there in Gorton, probably has a similar view. Jeremy Corbyn would probably have a similar view for his part. I mean, these people live among us, but they have a certain level of support. And I wonder, as Freddie Gray said at the beginning, whether this was kind of Keir Starmer's position by going, no, we're not going to allow the Americans to use military bases, whether he had a nod to that particular audience, which is tragic. I mean, it's the United Kingdom, for God's sake. This is not Tehran. We're not representing Islam or any specifics of that faith, the people that follow it, or in any shape or form. That should not be what this is about. But there is a big fear that it is about that. Lenny is in Ashford. What do you got for us, Lenny? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Well, the trouble with us getting into a confrontation with Islam is we wouldn't know whose side Starmer's on.
Well,
and that is your biggest problem. I mean, we used to have a saying, don't shoot the messenger, right? Mm-hmm. Now, with Starmer, I don't know how many messages he would shoot, but also, if things were going wrong and you needed help, like the American needed help to use our airports, and he declined it.
It's funny, isn't it, how he did? It's funny how he declined it, Lenny, and then, like, less than 48 hours later, changed his mind. You sort of wonder what happened there.
Well, I think his bottle went because of the reaction of the people of our country.
Well, and also the reaction of Donald Trump, who said I can't remember what the full quote was, but it was something like one of the worst things he's sort of heard an ally say.
Yeah, well, I mean...
He wasn't even asking for aeroplanes, he was just asking for the use of the military bases.
Yeah, well, what it is, Donald Trump is a positive person. And that is the exact opposite to Starmer. Nothing positive about him, sitting on the fence to see what side he wants to be on, whether he wants to be on Islam's side or the American side. By the time he caused so much trouble between us, and our relationship will never be the same all the time we got Starmer as a Prime Minister.
Yeah, and you do kind of wonder, don't you, at the moment, when you consider that one comment that, no, you can't use our bases. The relationship between Trump and Starmer was curiously okay, if you look at the strange relationships Trump has with some leaders. He was no threat to Trump, and it kind of there was a tolerance agreement, and apparently on personal level they quite liked each other, apparently. But this is a game changer, right? I mean, you know, for him to say that has absolutely changed things. And I think our last call made the point, I think it was Mark, the voice note in Manchester, about tariffs. I mean, we could have some horrendous tariffs coming our way as a result of this.
Where it's going to end.
Yeah.
And that because, you know, Trump can be very spiteful at the turn of a hat. Or at the turn of a coin, he can turn as spiteful as anything. And he is the last person you want to unnecessarily say no to.
I mean, there it is. Were we in a position to say no at that point? Should we have said no? Lenny, thank you very much indeed for that. Great calls coming in on this. Elaine says there are no boots on the ground. Things have changed, and the Iranian regime is slaughtering their own people, begging for Trump to help them. This is not the same as Iraq. That was based on lies, but there is a good reason for Trump doing what he's doing. The Iranians want regime change, and not the same as the cave dwellers in Iraq, and the Abraham Accords are in place now as well. This is not Iraq. It's not Iraq, but you can't blame people from feeling the echoes and the fallout of it. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. Time now, 2 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed talk. 0344 499 1000. More comment from you on the way. Donald Trump saying he's very disappointed in Keir Starmer for blocking him from using Diego Garcia to carry out those strikes on Iran. The US president said the Prime Minister's initial refusal to let US forces use the Chagos Islands base was unlike anything that had happened between our two countries before. Mr. Starmer did do a famous U-turn on this some hours later, but has the damage been done? Meanwhile, 3 American fighter jets were shot down in Kuwait in a friendly fire incident on Monday, according to the United States. We'll have more details on that. The term friendly fire, remember that back in the day, back on the agenda right now. And Keir Starmer's popularity has hit a new low after Labour's defeat in the Gorton and Denton by-election. A new survey has put his net approval rating at negative 949, the worst since taking office, and lower than those recorded by Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson, Theresa May. He's not in a great place, other than to say he is technically still there for another 3 and a bit years. Details to come on all of those big stories. 0344 499 1000. Loads more comment. We'll go back to your calls in a few moments' time. I just want to take a moment to focus back on that issue of Keir Starmer and the fallout from the Gorton and Denton by-election. I mean, there's always a bit of a fallout from these things and, you know, midterm blues and all the rest of it. But is this different? Let's speak with George Pascoe-Watson, former political editor over there at The Sun. Afternoon to you, George. Always good to see you. I mean, does this sit in any different place from other similar fallouts in the midterms following a by-election? Is Keir Starmer in a perilous position now?
Well, it's a very important question, because the whole nation at this particular moment looks to the Prime Minister and the leader of the country to make the right calls to position Britain correctly on the international stage. But more importantly, perhaps even for Keir Starmer, is how he manages his Labour Party right now, who are very, very split on international affairs. And it's a very difficult moment for Keir Starmer personally, I think, for that reason. The fact that he's at the lowest polling rating ever for himself is probably predictable. He's been on a downward spiral ever since he took number 10 keys, which is interesting given that he had a massive landslide majority, if we all remember, only 18 months ago. We talked, though, didn't we? Talked about it being a cosmetic landslide, in that we meant that it was very, very thin. Big numbers, but very thin. Most of his MPs, many of his MPs, not most, but many of his MPs have tiny majorities in their constituencies and could easily be blown away at another election. And so this is a really, really tight moment for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party.
It's interesting what's happening with our politics. Where, you know, the electorate has become quite promiscuous in this sense. You know, going back to when Boris Johnson got his 80-odd majority, it was widely considered by pretty much everybody that he's there for 2 terms. I mean, you simply don't overturn an 80 majority in that way. That would require Scotland to suddenly fall. And what happened? Scotland did, although it's somehow clawing its way back a little now. We'll see in a few weeks in May. But and so Mr. Starmer was able to come in and all those factors fell into place. If you'd have said to somebody half an hour ago the Green Party could be a big threat to Labour, people would have just laughed at you. With the Green Party, what, those vegans, really? They're no threat to the government. They might be. Plus, you've got Corbyn splitting things even further on the left. I mean, we could talk about the right another time, but the splits all over the place in that respect. I mean, it's hard to kind of... And, you know, as a political junkie and a political journalist, George, you know this. I mean, it's fun to sit and watch this stuff, but I've never seen anything like it.
Well, I've never seen anything like it either. We have a 2-horse race course in Britain for politics, and there are now about 6, maybe more, meaningful parties, which means that when it comes to a general election, the finishing post is only about 33% share of the vote to get you past in a first past the post system. And that means loads of parties are in with a chance of making government, and it's almost certain we'll have a coalition government next time around. What I do think, though, is if you think the voters, our viewers today, are like shoppers, they bought a lot of Labour, they didn't like what they bought, buyer's remorse, and now they're shopping around to see what else is on offer. And I think when they saw the Greens and Zach Polanski's rhetoric. Some people felt quite moved by that. There's a lot of people moving to the left in political situations right now. People seem to be soothed by the views of Zach Polanski and the Greens. They seem to think that makes sense. I get a sense, though, that when people have done all their shopping around, and that probably includes Reform as well, the prize might just go to the party which looks sane and sensible, and that might be Kemi Badenoch's Conservatives at the next election. I know that's a wild prediction, 3.5 years out. It's mad to make a prediction 3.5 minutes out right now. But I do think that in the end, if the Conservatives stay sober and grown up and look like the only grown-ups in the room, that's probably their best chance.
Do you think behind that big black door of Downing Street at the moment there is panic? I know that, you know, certainly over the years stories come and stories go, and, you know, we in the media report certain things. You know, if you spoke to Alistair Campbell, as we both have many times over the years, he was always nothing to sit here, mate, sod off. You know, that was his kind of very sort of go-to kind of way of dealing with things. What about today? What do you imagine is happening there at the moment? Do you think it's an absolute frenzy of concern and worry?
I think it's a hugely hostile time in politics, full stop. And when you are in the number 10 seat, then all the pressure's on you to make the right decisions. The scrutiny is always there. And you are in charge of a political party, by which I mean the MPs, who themselves are far from united, and there's lots of factions, and there's very little support for Keir Starmer. So if you are running number 10, if you're the Prime Minister's team, it is an extremely tense, difficult time. And of course, just in the last 2 weeks, he's lost some very, very senior advisors who were keeping the show very much together and advising on policy and research and strategy. So without those people, who are the new people? Every time you lose big senior figures, you have to put your trust in others who may not be quite as grounded and quite close to you as the previous lot were. So it's a very, very difficult time to make the right decisions. And of course, we're asking them to do the right decisions at a time of maximum pressure in the world with what's going on in the Gulf. And that is just an impossible situation for anybody to perform. Doesn't matter if you're the Labour Party or any political party. This is very, very high stakes stuff. And so, if anything, the people in Downing Street cannot panic. They mustn't panic. They must try and keep their eye on the prize and focus on doing the right thing. Don't forget, we've got military, we've got bases, we've got our own people around the world who could be in peril here. And the primary challenge for any Prime Minister right now is making sure that they are safe and this nation's defences are safe.
Indeed. Quick word, if you would, George. Robert Jenrick, now a Reform MP, releasing one of his... He loves a video, Bob Jenrick, doesn't he? And that's what he's done, released a video questioning Rachel Reeves's relationship with a man called Arshad Khatana, described as a rather unpleasant character all round. Let's have a little listen and a look at what Mr. Jenrick revealed. He did tease this over the weekend. Big reveal this morning at 8:30 on his X feed. Here's what he said.
Here in Leeds, where Rachel Reeves is the MP, 1 in 4 aren't working. Now, you'd think the person in charge of the economy would be focused on fixing that. Instead, she's been hanging out with the man she describes as her friend, Arshad Khatana.
Pleasure to be here with you this evening.
A man who shared a military video, which also glorified terrorists from 2 terror groups, who said that those who speak against Islam are an evil gang who he will help to destroy, who's hosted preachers at his Leeds mosque with vile views.
This may get raised, of course, in PMQs at some point, George, but a similar question that I asked Freddie Gray a little earlier on this point. Is this a Westminster Village story, or does this have serious ramifications for the Chancellor?
You can never really tell if something has serious ramifications until the thing plays out. I see the Labour Party has moved very, very quickly indeed to say that this individual has been removed from the Labour Party pending an inquiry, and it's been made clear that Rachel Reeves did not know any of the background of the detail, and it would be astonishing to imagine that she did know that. So I imagine it'll be dealt with in the course of events. Although what I would say is, of course, Rachel Reeves is due to make her spring statement to the House about the nation's budget. Now, that is really, really important. Although it's only been cut down to 20 minutes, it is an important moment for her and for the country. And more importantly, you know, we look at what's happening in the Gulf again, the danger of energy prices going through the roof, and that's going to put a danger of the rise in the cost of borrowing just at a time when the Labour government wanted inflation to come down so they could lower interest rates. So it's a very difficult time for a story like this, which is a big distraction for her. But of course, it goes to the heart of what's happening in British politics and the Labour Party right now, and who is supporting who.
Indeed. George, great to have you on. Lovely to see you again. Thank you, George Pascoe-Watson, former political editor over there at The Sun, absolute legend on Fleet Street as well. Thank you to him. Comments from you, Mike in Norfolk. Keir Starmer has a four-way problem. How to pacify Trump, his backbenchers, the Muslim vote and us Brits. Yeah, and they'll be thinking about all of that. And, of course, you have to remember the bloke in charge is Keir Starmer, who's not very good at being a Prime Minister. And I think that is demonstrable in almost every breath he takes and every step he makes. Was that a song? I think so. David Oxford says, apart from arresting people for hurty words and chucking anyone right of centre in the slammer, what does Starmer actually do or believe in? It's exactly that, isn't it? What does he believe in? What does he believe in? I think, you know, I think David Cameron had a similar problem. David Cameron, of course, only ever led, he led a coalition and then he won himself in 2015. It wasn't the greatest win ever, but it was a win. And Cameron was good at speaking, OK? He looked better and spoke better than Starmer, but there was still that sense of, what does he really believe in? And Starmer has that to the power of 1,000. 0344 499 1000. The big issue, should the UK get involved in Iran after what happened at the weekend? Let's get a voice note on this from Gavin in the northwest.
Ultimately, can we afford it? No. Should we be getting involved? No. I think that kind of sums it up. We can't afford to get involved in a war. We can't afford to help the people that live here. We can't afford to protect our borders. We can't afford our energy costs. I think we've got enough problems on the table already. Let them do what they've got to do out there for the people that can afford it.
Yeah, there is a bit of that. I mean, I don't come at this from any philosophical, political position about pacification or a view on the rights and wrongs of warfare. You know, jaw, not war. It's not that. I mean, to me, firstly, we can't control our own borders. So while all this is kicking off, who the hell is coming in to this country? That question has never been more poignant than right now. We know people come in from Iran all the time. Well, with this kind of caper going on, I think we better make sure nobody comes in from, like, today onwards. Is anyone even looking at that? Wouldn't they, if you were in charge of Border Force, wouldn't you go, OK, right, we don't put people in jail that come on the boats. They just sort of get given a hotel at some level in the process. But right now, it's literally right now, after what happened at the weekend, and we are kind of a bit involved because of our air bases, and see Cyprus for details, then I think it's probably more pressing than ever that we are absolutely vigilant about who... So anyone on a boat this week, you're going to jail, mate. You're going to jail. We don't know who you are. Plus, as Gavin just said, we're skint. We haven't got the money for this kind of caper. This will be Andrew in Hertfordshire. Andrew, what are you thinking? Hi.
Hi. Our deliverance date for Starmer to go grows ever closer. The interesting point is, you know, he follows, he lets the process do his thinking, as we've always said. He had a chance to lead and back America. If you go to Lakenheath, it's an American base, and then Diego Garcia. Trump asked him for help. He said no. And Trump did say in that speech to NATO, I don't think you'd help me when we call for your help. And after the royal visit, he did, yeah. And he's been proved right. And when he's proved right, he makes people know.
But should we have given him our help?
Yeah. Ian, Iran hit Cyprus. Think about that. How long before they had a missile to hit the UK?
Well, they hit Cyprus on the back of us giving him our help.
Yeah, but they had that within their range. We should have stood fair square with Trump. We should have done it. We're spineless, useless, and gutless with him in charge.
But do we want to get into that whole... I mean, look, I think Starmer didn't give him the support because politically and instinctively in Starmer's thinking, he didn't want to. My position is both that we can't afford to and we just shouldn't take that risk.
Ian, the man they killed on Saturday, his people took a 20-year-old girl who wouldn't wear a headscarf and beat her to death in a cell.
I get all of that.
If we don't stand up for that, we stand for nothing. This was about being a country that cares for freedom and democracy.
But of course, there are wider questions beyond all those horrendous stories, which happen in many regimes around the world on a daily basis. And we never get involved. We wouldn't consider getting involved. So the idea that this is just some kind of humanitarian intervention isn't quite true.
No, come on, Ian, take a step back. There was a time when we fought for the oppressed around the world. Come on.
I get that. But are we going to create something bigger as we did with Iraq and to a degree Afghanistan? Are we going to create a bigger problem for ourselves?
What have we and you and the media become? So we're a country where the fear of failure outweighs the risk of success. What a low point for us as a country.
Can we afford, I don't mean just in monetary terms, I mean that's a separate point but a fairly important one, but just in terms of our own safety, our own issues, our own hassles, our own woes, will this country become safer or less safe if we intervened in Iran? And it should be said America hasn't asked for her literal assistance on this yet.
Ian, the great tragedy in this is we love inertia in this country now because we're run by a human rights lawyer and he is managed by a human rights lawyer. The stark reality is we spend our military budget on broadband and green energy. We cannot protect our citizens or the country. The fact it doesn't... What's the price of not spending on defence? You and me speaking Russian or speaking Urdu because we have to, and our wives and children butchered, raped and murdered.
It's a profound point and a powerful one, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed, Andrew in Hertfordshire. Thank you to him. Just a bit of extra news. Israel's military has said that it struck Hezbollah targets in Lebanon after the Iranian-backed Shia group said it launched rockets and drones at the Israeli city of Haifa to avenge the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Lebanon's health ministry said 31 people were killed by Israeli strikes in Beirut, southern suburbs, where Hezbollah has a strong presence. There were no reports of casualties in Israel from Hezbollah's fire, which the group said was retaliation for the killing of, Khamenei's pure blood, they said, and Israel's strikes in Lebanon since a ceasefire ended a war, of course, between them 15 months ago. We'll bring you more updates on that. Gary says, now that Donald Trump has ordered the airstrikes that targeted and killed the despotic leader, what is an evil Iranian regime? What evil Iranian regime can we put to bed? Shall I start that again? Now that Donald Trump has ordered the airstrikes that targeted and killed the despotic leader of what is an evil Iranian regime, can we put to bed the idea that is popular among many on the left that Donald Trump is a Putin puppet because the Ayatollah Khamenei was one of the few allies that Putin had in this world. Now he's gone and Putin is weaker for it. That's a great point. Putin is much weaker for it. Thank you, Gary, without the commas. 0344 499 1000. That's where you'll find us. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
This in from Pumpkin, who says, now is the time to fill up your vehicles and fuel. All they want is an excuse to double the prices. Yeah, don't want to encourage that, by the way. But when they start hitting oil refineries, as they did in Saudi, then you are naturally forced to wonder what the heck that leads to. Steve in Bromsgrove says, of course we need to be involved in regime change in Iran. It is necessary to step in, reversing the Islamification of Europe and the UK. Iran is propagating the spread of radical Islam to achieve long-term eradication of white Christian Europe, says Steve. Well, they are absolutely the greatest country on earth for sponsoring terrorism. I mean, their tentacles are so darn wide. I mean, we talk about, you think about Hezbollah and you think about all the Hamas and these kind of areas of life, but it goes way beyond that. It goes into all sorts of other little caverns and nooks and crannies around this. Let's go to Michael in Hertfordshire. Michael, how are you doing?
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm good. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that Starmer didn't come on board straight away because he's worried about his own MPs and his own position, which is completely atrocious.
Yeah.
And the other point I'd like to make is they're not attacking the people of Iran. They're attacking the extremists that run Iran.
Yeah.
People should get that in their heads. And if they don't deal with it now, the bomb probably becomes bigger.
But that, of course, was that was the whole point in Iraq, wasn't it? To get rid of Saddam Hussein. And then, of course, what they didn't realise, and I don't think this is... They're not an equivalence, Iran and Iraq, but there are some similarities. The broad sense, of course, is that supporters of the now former Ayatollah aren't just going to disappear.
No, they're not, because there's a fight between the old and the new, and that's the problem. And people want democracy. I mean, how can any government be allowed to carry on when they've killed their own people? It's just ludicrous. And the governments have got to come together to deal with this problem. It's no good fighting among and stuttering and talking. It's got to be dealt with. The whole world, I mean, NATO's come out and said we have to deal with this problem.
But, of course, we're asking the question about should the UK get involved. America or Israel have not asked for anybody else to get involved so far. So I guess the question is... it's hypothetical in many respects, but it's the idea that we support what America are doing. That's important, right?
Well, they did ask to use our air bases, which Starmer refused to start with.
Yeah.
So that's not 100% correct.
I think he had Lord Hermer in his ear saying, no, you can't do that kind of stuff. I mean, these people are hopeless.
Please keep up your good work. It's appreciated.
Michael, and so is your call. Thank you, sir, for that. Tracy in Hereford. Tracy, how are you doing?
Hi, Ian. I think we should have backed Trump, or at least let him use our airspace.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you're saying about it being, could cause a World War III, but like I said to your producer, that if, God forbid, something happened to Britain, and by the time the EU all sat around the table and voted on helping us out, I think we'd be done for. So I would rather have America in my backyard than EU.
Yes, and I don't dispute that at all. I remember, when Blair talks about going back to Iraq again, he says, to him, it was unthinkable that we would not be backing the United States. And I think he was right about that, even though he was wrong about loads of other stuff.
Yeah, and I think also with Starmer, he'll never admit it, but I think his interests and he's too well in with the keeping hold of the Muslim faith.
Yeah, I think it is that. And after what happened, with the Green Party, he's got one eye on that. And I think they made a knee-jerk reaction at the weekend and said, no, you can't use the air bases. And then realised that politically this was a ridiculous thing to say. And now they've changed it.
I mean, I feel for the Iranian people, and I'm pleased it's happened. I think it should have happened a long time ago, but I don't know my history that well. I am that ignorant to it, but I believe that wasn't it America and Britain that sort of put him there in the first place?
Well, when you get into who appointed who, we end up in a right old web of hypocrisy and contradiction, because there are, you know, who trained the army for this, and who was it that originally trained what is now recognised as a terror group. You know, there's all of that going on as well. I don't pretend to either, like yourself, to know, you know, to have a PhD in this territory, but I do know that we'd all go mad if we started to look for consistency in these stories, because it just isn't there. Tracy, thank you very much indeed. I understand that totally. The UK has issued a cybersecurity alert over the escalating conflicts in the Middle East, urging organisations to be aware of the risk of cyber attacks from Iran. Now, that is naturally something that they would put out. Modern warfare, of course, doesn't include, or doesn't have to, you know, doesn't have to involve tanks and planes. It can literally involve a teenager sitting in a basement anywhere on planet Earth, pressing the right button with a little knowledge of coding, and Bob's your uncle, and you've flawed an entire system. So naturally the government would announce that. In about an hour's time, Keir Starmer is speaking in Parliament. We'll take that speech when it happens. It's likely to be a bit of a reiteration of some of what we already know. He has a duty, of course, to inform Parliament of these things, so that would be literally his job. But will there be anything else in that speech? So we'll bring that to you live a little bit later. Sue says we cannot afford not to fight this Islamist threat. And this one in from Kelvin. It says, afternoon, Ian, most Muslim countries support Trump's attack on Iran, but other Muslim countries like the UK and France don't. It's nicely put from Kelvin. The issue is, I mean, Sue's made the point we can't afford not to fight. I don't think we're going to be asked to fight, certainly not yet. So it will probably never come to that. The point that Freddie Gray from The Spectator made at the beginning was that we've kind of flunked it a little bit, because we've now upset Iran and America. So the two sides, and Israel. So we've upset all three involved in the situation. Not the people of Iran, but certainly those that mean harm to countries like ours. 0344 499 1000. More strong voices on this issue coming next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, just gone 1:30. So the UK will allow Washington to use British bases to destroy Iran's missiles and its ability to fire them at allies in the Gulf, says Keir Starmer. The US military is sending more troops to the Middle East as the attacks on Iran continue. We'll talk to Lily Moose shortly, Iranian-born human rights activist who we've spoken to previously on this. First, Peter Oborn, the journalist and broadcaster. Good afternoon to you, Peter. Nice to have you with us. Your reaction, if you would, firstly, to Keir Starmer's, well, it was a bit of a U-turn for Keir, which is unusual, I know, at the weekend when he said, no, you can't use our bases, and then, oh, actually, no, you can use our bases. What did you make of that?
Well, I think that as the British Prime Minister is a bit of a shambles. But he did make the right decision to begin with. He said, and I admire him for that he said that Britain wouldn't get involved in this illegal war. There's no possible argument that Israel and the United States launched an illegal attack on Iran 2 days ago with consequences which do not bear thinking about. And in a moment of listening to, I imagine, his legal advisors, Mr. Zakir said, no, you can't take off. You can't use our bases to bomb Iran. But that's now changed. It is reported that he had a stern talking to from Donald Trump, and certainly he was insulted by Donald Trump.
You say illegal, and I know this, certainly not the only voice to make that point that it might be illegal. I've even heard Republicans in America say that they felt this was illegal. However, there is a counter argument to that, of course, mainly from Israel, who would say, no, hang on a second, this place has been sponsoring, firing goodness knows what all over the place, all manner of threats that have gone on for not just the last few months, but for absolutely years and decades. So we have that to contend with. And in addition, of course, this is a country that has willingly and openly said that the destruction of Israel is our ultimate aim in life. So, Israel could make a fair argument, Peter.
You're normally quite sensible, but you're not talking the truth here.
Well, I'm merely putting that view.
No, I'm just under international law. You can launch a preemptive attack, which is what this is, under two circumstances. One, if your people are directly being threatened and there's an imminent attack being threatened, and you can prove that. And on this occasion, in fact, we've had briefing now from the Pentagon contradicting Trump's assertion that there was some form of imminent attack, because no, there wasn't. I mean, they were quite clear about this. It's very interesting that in the top might of the U.S. military machine, there is such dissent at the president's erratic, stupid, unconstitutional action. The second case in which you can launch a preemptive strike is if you have consent from the United Nations Security Council. And you'll even try to go to the United Nations, and that is a distinction that should be made between the attempt with Tony Blair and George Bush to do that when the quite comparable illegal attack on Iraq was made 20 years ago, with the catastrophic consequences we now know.
So it would be no defence at all to suggest, hang on, this is a regime, it's clearly a huge sponsor of terrorism, not just in the region, Hezbollah, Hamas, etc., but beyond that, some would reasonably argue it's slaughtered 30,000 of its own people, it has abysmal human rights records, everything that you'll be familiar with, Peter. Those are not in itself, that has to go through other layers like the United Nations, and that certainly divides the room. It's not good enough to take the word of what is happening on the ground from the Israelis and therefore the Americans.
That's exactly right. And indeed, the fact that Saddam Hussein who was a complete monster, we could all agree about that, and had slaughtered his own people in genocidal quantities, that was not an excuse it was not put forward by Britain and the United States as a reason for the attack on Saddam.
Indeed. Where do you see this ending, Peter? Is this, Donald Trump, whatever you think of him, is a man that, see Venezuela for details, in and out like a robber's dog, whatever the rights and the wrongs are.
Butcher's dog.
That's how he prefers things to happen. Of course, the other view is that this could go on for absolutely years.
Well, I think that let's see. But I think let's talk about nearer to home. If this carries on and they somehow knock out the regime, they haven't a clue what's going to happen next. I mean, by the way, it's worth saying Trump is an oaf. He's a convicted felon. He has no judgment or knowledge of these things. He was a draft dodger in Vietnam. Netanyahu is wanted by the International Criminal Court for alleged war crimes in Gaza. These are two elderly men conjured up between them an illegal assault. They don't know what, and I think in the case of either of them, don't really care what's going to happen next. But bring it, well, if indeed they could produce chaos in Iran, I'm going to warn you of one thing. There's 90 million people in Iran, and there's not going to be a smooth handover of power. Is very likely to be some form of civil war. There's going to be tens of millions of refugees pouring out of that country to escape the likely violence. And quite a lot of them are going to come to Europe. And we're going to have to deal with the consequences here in Britain of this really stupid and rash and ill thought out and illegal decision by the United States.
So in that respect, Peter, you see it very much like Iraq, which is precisely what happened there, of course. You know, getting rid of Saddam was one thing, and then the whole thing splintered into all sorts of other areas. This thirst for Pahlavi, the exiled crown prince, to run the show, you're not buying into that? You don't think that'll be a smooth transition if it comes to that?
That's a joke. I mean, we put in Britain, as you know, has a terrible record in Iran, and so does the United States. In 1952-3, Britain and the United States engineered a coup d'etat against the democratically elected Iranian government, Mossadegh's government. I think we wanted their oil, actually. I think it was as grim as that. That led to the installation of this brutal dictatorship run by this bogus monarchy. It went on for 25 years or so and generated such disgust was felt by the Iranian people. Eventually, they put in the mullahs, and we're now trying to bring back the Pahlavis. It's quite obviously a joke, and it's not going to work. And by the way, it's also disgraceful. I've been studying what he's saying, and you know that on day one of this attack, besides the illegal assassination of Khomeini, they killed about 160. The Americans or the Israelis killed about 160 in school children, girls. Pahlavi doesn't care so little about his own people. He's just an instrument for the United States and Israel that he hasn't even condemned that or expressed his disgust about the slaughter of 160 schoolgirls in Iran.
Peter, on that point, thank you. Peter Oborne, journalist and broadcaster with a very different view to many of our guests. That's what we're all about. You heard his view. You want to respond to it? Let's speak to Lily Moo, Iranian-British human rights activist. Lily, we'll come to some of what Peter said in a moment, because I can already predict some disagreement from you coming. Just give us firstly your reaction initially to what happened at the weekend and America taking out the supreme leader and many others in that onslaught in Iran. What was your first reaction to hearing that news?
Good afternoon to you and all of your viewers, and thank you for having me on again. And I just want to say one thing to Mr. Peter Oborne, who laughs at the bloodshed that has happened in Iran at the hands of the very Ayatollah he so relentlessly wants to support and show remorse for his death. Well, Iranians are rejoicing within Iran, within the borders of Iran, and throughout the diaspora. We in our thousands were dancing outside number 10 yesterday, even though we were calling out for support for the Iranian people and for the support of Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, who is indeed calling out the opposition leader for this transition time, whose only his name has been called out inside of Iran and outside of Iran for a leading and peaceful period of transition after this regime falls. You see, Iranians are not politically orphaned and they are not uneducated. Unlike our friend here who loves the IRGC so much and calls the rescue mission at the brave hands of the Americans and Israelis for a rescue of 90 million Iranians, an illegal act. I want to remind you, sir, that there was a quid pro quo agreement between the people of Iran and President Donald Trump, where Iranians came out in the streets willingly and called out willingly with their own cognizant brains after they saw the value of real fall to zero and their dignity become mute in the international community. They chose to choose life and dignity and light for themselves above all the darkness that this regime has befolded and has thrown at us and has destroyed the international community. The very regime that you so adamantly supporting against Reza Pahlavi, Crown Prince of Iran, the leader of the opposition, whose name Iranian people are cognizantly calling out, and they are saying it in English. In 400 cities at the same time, Iranians came out in their millions, sir. They came out and they call out with their clarity, King Reza Pahlavi. So people like you don't just come out and spew lies that you want to hear for yourself. Yes, there is a bad track record of Britain in Iran, but those people are like you, not like Sir Winston Churchill, who believes in liberty above all for humanities across the international community. So I have just one message for you, sir. It is indeed a momentous day, and Iranian people are celebrating the death of Khamenei.
No, I get it. You're obviously aiming this at Peter Oborne, not to me personally. I understand.
International law.
I understand that. I just wanted to clarify if anybody just switched on. Just give us a word what you think, Lily. The other point that Oborne made was that this will end up like Iraq, where everything you've just said, notwithstanding that, clearly the amount of support to remove this regime is huge. But there is a danger that there will be a splinter of different people vying for power. What's your reaction to that?
Regarding civil war or such terms, there is a war on the civilians of Iran at the hands of this regime, and the people who are bearing arms have been promised immunity should they lay down their arms and join the people. Iranian people are not willing to rip Iran apart just because people are skeptical of our freedom. We deserve this freedom. And you know what? We are remorseful for every life in Israel that has been taken at the hands of this regime. We are remorseful for every life in the Middle East that has been taken at the hands of this regime. People in Iraq, after the Saddam Hussein fall, fell into the hands of this regime.
I got it.
And now they have a chance at life. We are not going to become refugees further on. Our diaspora is going back home. And yes, this freedom, this act of rescue, it is an international law. Right to protect, responsibility to protect falls on the shoulders of the leaders of the international community. And two leaders took action exactly for that law. R2P exists in international law. Speaking about international law, it's not going to be nice for you, the journalists, the so-called journalists previous to me here, talking all in favor of the regime. We Iranian people will never forget your betrayal of truth for Iranian humanity.
Okay.
Our narrative belongs to us. And I truly thank you, talkTV. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. It's a pleasure.
For allowing Iranian people not let their narratives stolen by people who are so egotistic that with their geriatric ideas of a revolution that already failed and Iranians have paid with their lives for 47 years, wants to sit here and say Donald Trump's an old man who doesn't know what to do.
Lily, it's always very, it's more than passionate, it's heartfelt, and I thank you for coming on. Lily Moo, responding there mostly to Peter Oborne, our previous guest. Lily is an Iranian-British human rights activist. Thank you to her. We're back to the Middle East. Isabel Oakeshott, who's right out there on the Abu Dhabi-Saudi border. We'll get the latest from her coming next on Talk.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in third place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, what your gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Thank you to Kaz, who says, Trump very disappointed in Starmer. Welcome to our world for the last 18 months, sweetheart. It's a good point. Let's speak with Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. She joins us currently in the UAE. Isabel, good afternoon to you. Of course, we're hearing that there are ramifications right across the region, whether it's people hearing things or, you know, physical damage people are witnessing. What is your take on this right now?
So I think the situation right now, certainly in Dubai, is one of a feeling of potential calm before the storm. It is impossible to overstate the shock in the UAE that it was deliberately targeted by the Iranian regime. The UAE is not an enemy of the Iranian regime. They certainly don't approve of them. They don't have any time for their extremist interpretation of Islam. But the two nations do business, and there is outrage that this has happened. And initially, the assumption amongst people who live here was that it must be some kind of mistake, you know, that the hitting of the Fairmont Hotel on the Palm Jumeirah must have been accidental. And we still don't know quite how it was that that hotel came to be damaged. But nonetheless, it became very apparent quickly that evening that Dubai was specifically under targeted attack. And as we've seen over the past 24 hours, the Iranians have also been attacking other Gulf cooperation countries. And there is now a feeling that it is likely that those GCC countries will put up some kind of coordinated response. Now, I don't know that from any authority, but there is a significant speculation that there will be that it feels that there is some need to push back. And so that, of course, has other implications. You know, if the UAE is going to hit back at Iran, does that mean the UAE is going to come under further attack?
Yeah. In terms of, I was about to say,
today is actually...
Go on, do continue, Isabel, sorry. And we've slightly lost Isabel's line there. We are going to just concentrate to try and get that back. Understandably, you know, I mean, maybe nothing to do with what's going on. But, you know, it's Wi-Fi, kids. It happened to me watching Chelsea Arsenal at the weekend, so it can happen to anybody. This one in from John in Blackpool. Why does nobody fear World War III anymore? Everybody seems so unconcerned about it. Yeah, there is that sense. Maybe it's sort of, I don't know, maybe an odd human kind of reaction that we try to just, keep calm and, as the phrase goes, carry on. This one in from Michael in Kent. The UK government should be ashamed of themselves turning our back on our allies. Trump has liberated Venezuela, now Iran. Can we be next, please, Mr. President? Says Michael in Kent. 0344 499 1000. This one in from Dell, who says Peter Oborne just lied about the slaughter of 160 schoolgirls. Propaganda. It's interesting that I don't know where the number 160 came from. Not that one wouldn't be devastating enough. But as I understand it, and I'm not here to defend anything awful that has gone on, there is still a lack of confirmation at all on the school story. But, of course, if that changes, we will bring it to you. Ray says, did you see the new MP for Denton and Gorton standing with a few constituents for a minute's silence for the dead leader of Iran? Absolutely breathtaking stuff. Kevin is in Basingstoke. Kev, what have you got for us? Hi.
I don't really think we should get involved because it's a breach of international law. It's a breach of American law. Donald Trump's tariffs are damaging our economy. What else I was going to say? He insulted our military, saying that we didn't really help in Afghanistan when hundreds of people died and were seriously injured. We helped in Afghanistan for 13 years.
Okay.
It cost us billions of pounds. And he insults our military.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much indeed for that. Kevin in Basingstoke. Isabel Oakeshott is back with us. God bless Wi-Fi, Isabel. I'm glad you're there, though. I was just about to ask you, I mean, whatever is likely to happen over the following days and weeks, I mean, there is a reality, isn't there, that accidental damage and why certain buildings might have been hit and drone attacks that were not intended but nonetheless manifested in some damage. What it has done, it's closed down much of the area in terms of flights and movement.
Yeah, there are now a very limited number of flights going out from Dubai Airport and also from Abu Dhabi. I'm not actually clear who is on those flights. It's not by any means any kind of full commercial operation, and it is quite possible to leave Dubai. I'm seeing all these unbelievably hysterical videos and posts from these social media influencers and tourists panicking, saying that they're sleeping in their bathrooms and they are trapped underground. I mean, this is complete nonsense. It's completely possible to drive safely out of Dubai if you're that way inclined. Generally, today it's been pretty calm. I heard loud blasts first thing this morning, but there's been nothing much all day. So a few rumblings, the sound of the odd plane, but nothing to get anybody to be hiding in their bathroom about. But as I was saying when I got cut off, there is an expectation, a sense of anticipation about what the next 24 to 48 hours may bring. And no complacency. One can always be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
What do you make? We spoke to Peter Oborne a little earlier, and you might be ahead of me just by dint of me mentioning Peter Oborne. And he was suggesting that this was all against international law. It's going to create carnage. It'll be a bit like Iraq, where you get rid of the leadership, but then, of course, all these different splintered groups pop up, civil war erupts, and it doesn't recover for decades. What's your, as our international editor, hat on this, Isabel? We've only got 30 seconds, but what's your response on that?
Trump took a very long time to do this relative to when he said help was on his way. So we can only hope that this has been meticulously planned. And in the space of just a few hours, they took out 40 of the Iranian regime leadership. I think this has been precision, and I think they will have given a lot of thought to what happens afterwards, having hopefully learnt the lessons of previous conflicts.
We hope so. Isabel, thank you. Stay safe. Always great to have you on with us. Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. Which way does this one go? And, of course, as Isabel said there, the pivotal timetable at the moment really is the next 24, 48 hours. We've got that announcement in Parliament coming from Keir Starmer in the next hour. I'll bring you that live. Likely to be a reiteration of events, but if there's any new info there, you'll hear it live right here on Talk. Let's get the latest news at 3 o'clock.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back. By the way, naturally responding, of course, to events at the weekend, Donald Trump, though, is very disappointed in Keir Starmer for blocking him from using Diego Garcia to carry out those strikes. The US president said the Prime Minister's initial refusal, he did change his mind eventually, under some duress, I would hasten to add. His initial refusal, unlike anything he'd seen happen between our two countries before, and I get that totally. I think who would not see it in that kind of way? And this, look, we're not intervening, we're not going out there full pelt with jets and boots on the ground and God knows what else. This was about whether we can use, or they can use, a bit of land that happens to belong to us. Well, at the moment. 3 American fighter jets were shot down at the weekend as well by Kuwait in a friendly fire incident on Monday. The term friendly fire, do you remember how often that used to crop up during the Iraq War and the like? More on that. And Keir Starmer's popularity, separate story here, has hit a new low after that by-election result last week in Gorton and Denton. He's looking at negative 49. That's the worst since taking office. It's actually lower than anything that Rishi Sunak got. That tells you a lot. Boris Johnson or even Theresa May. More on those stories and, of course, what's crucial to all of this, your responses. 0344 499 1000. I thought it was interesting, by the way, the one point that Peter Oborne did make that might resonate with some, and I did say this right at the beginning, that we can't control our own borders. So given that there's an Iranian contingent to those people who come over on boat, it would seem to me extraordinary that literally from today, and by the way, the weather's great out there, it's going to be great for the next few days, there will be more crossings this week. At what point would a government not go, right, from this moment, anyone who comes over on a boat, given what's going on in the Middle East, we are literally going to detain every single one of those people? You'd like to think that conversation between Starmer, the Home Secretary, Border Force, all the various intelligence groups that would advise a Prime Minister, you'd like to think that's already happened. That was the first meeting at 6 o'clock this morning. Boats coming across the Channel this week after what's happened, no. Every single one of those people is detained. Every single one of those people detained. Peter Oborne's point was that we're going to see more of that because there will be displacement in Iran, and that will naturally, ultimately, spew into Europe and inevitably us. Thoughts on that? Let's get a word with Henry Bolton on the wider issue of small boats. Henry is, of course, international border control expert. It's at an all-time high, Henry. I mean, every time we speak, it's at another all-time high. This is only going in one direction. Just a word, if you would, on that first point I was just making about boats coming across this week. And good afternoon, by the way.
Good afternoon. Yeah, indeed. I mean, I live right down on the coast. I mean, it's a 10-minute walk to the actual coast from where I live. And the weather here is fantastic. It's the best day I think we've had so far this year. Undoubtedly, there'll be crossings. Maybe not this morning wasn't quite so good. Last night wasn't quite so good. But tonight, the next few nights, certainly we'll expect some more. What you just said about the detentions, I've long argued that every single person who comes across on a small boat should be detained in any case.
Yeah, well, indeed.
For years. And still we're not in that situation. We've still not got a government that's prepared to take that action to protect the British people. And it's, you're quite right to say that we can expect an increase in the threat, but that'll take some time to feed through the system. And the dynamic will change because most of the people who've been coming across from Iran to date seemingly or certainly present themselves as anti-regime people. Well, now we're going to have pro-regime people probably coming. And what are we going to do with them? So, fundamentally, this government, the previous government, have failed to protect the British people because most of the risk, the threat, in the sense that you're talking about, is already here. We've already let them in.
Yeah. But I was it was probably misplaced hope on my part, Henry, that this government would actually grow a pair and see some just basic common sense and indeed concern for our safety, that even by their own woeful standards, and it's been inept, and so was the previous government as well, for all the reasons you just gave. You might think this week of all weeks will be the one time they go, we've got to step this up now.
Yeah, you might think that, but they haven't, have they? And they have never. They've never done this. How many times have we been here and we've said this? And nothing seems to jolt them into that sort of action. The other thing is there's a practical operational restriction because the facilities to detain people simply don't exist. Again, I've been saying, we need to build detention facilities across the country in remote areas. Indeed, I'm spokesman for the Social Democrat Party on foreign affairs, defence and security, and it's been long the SDP policy to open up such a detention facility out on the Ascension Islands. And the rationale for that, although expensive, is what better deterrent? Your feet don't touch the ground. You're immediately on transport to the north, to the mid-Atlantic, and you don't leave there until you decide you want to go home, or we can send you home. You're not even in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
But and you're not posing a threat to anybody. So, but we've got a fundamental failure of leadership in this country. It's just fundamental. We don't have the vision, we don't have the moral courage, we don't have the integrity, we don't have anything that's required to do this job in government. And I say that in a sense that I'm embarrassed. You've just talked about Iran, and without going down that rabbit hole, we are embarrassing ourselves on the international stage and with our allies. We spend now, depends how you measure it, but somewhere around about 14th on our expenditure as per GDP in NATO. 18 months ago, 2 years ago, we were second. We're in danger of losing the Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Europe post. We can't secure our own borders. We can't secure our sovereign bases in Cyprus. This government is not a joke. It is a disaster. It has had so many opportunities to address these things and failed again to do so.
But don't worry, Henry, because there is an answer, and it was staring us in the face. It's the next initiative. It's like an episode of Roadrunner, isn't it? Always coming up with a new idea to catch the target, as it were. From stop the boats to smash the gangs, and now, of course, from today, migrants' right to permanent asylum in the UK will be scrapped. This will make not a jot of difference, but for some reason, Shabana Mahmood thinks it might.
Well, I'm going to sort of give her a little bit of credit here. I have long said, and I think I've said to you in the past, that the Home Office approach is fundamentally weak because it has not been predicated on the idea that asylum, refuge, is granted on a temporary basis, unlike Denmark. So she's often cited Denmark as the example. Denmark has long had that principle in its immigration law that refugee status, if you like, is only temporary in nature until your country is safe again. Now she's implementing that partly. This is a step down that route, and Denmark has got on top of a lot of its asylum work, and she's moving down that road tentatively. And certainly it's not complete yet. But
you shouldn't have to get to that point, should you, Henry? I mean, we should never even be at the point of discussing residency for people who are coming into the country this way.
I know, but that's where we've presumed our administrative approach to this, and legal has assumed that anybody that we let in across, that we accept, we say, yeah, you're a refugee, we grant you asylum. Basically, that's been a sort of open door then to citizenship ultimately. And I have to say that she has made that route a lot more difficult now. But it is not complete because Denmark, for example, what happens, this is administrative effectively what she's doing. It's not particularly legal. It's not illegal, but it's being done through administrative means rather than legal means. And in Denmark, it's much the same. However, if you do not comply, so in the end, you're told, right, now, country X is safe, your status is revoked, you are leaving. In Denmark, if you do not leave, you are put into basically secure accommodation until such time as you can be forcibly removed. Under the Home Secretary's new rules, That's the weak area. It's the enforcement, because there will be a discretionary withdrawal of support. So, for example, accommodation and so on. And the element of being able to apply to Article 8 of the ECHR, which allows for a claim against or an appeal against deportation on the basis of settled life in the UK. She's addressed that somewhat, but nowhere near enough. So that's still an opening. So removing people who don't want to go home is still going to be mightily difficult. So that's the door she's got to close before any of this is going to be effective. And again, we still have not addressed the ultimate problem, which is why the United Kingdom is an attractive destination for people to come here.
Yeah.
I've said over and over again that as long as there is an appeal to coming here, then they will come.
Of course. You don't come somewhere if there is no appeal. It's as simple as that. Listen, Henry, it's always very thorough stuff from you, sir. Thank you very much indeed, Henry Bolton. He's an international border control expert, a regular with us here on Talk. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. We are, of course, talking mainly, and why would we not, about what happened at the weekend. Of course, that question, should the UK get involved in Iran? I mean, there's not been... largely hypothetical, but I think we should stand by for that question to possibly take root over the coming weeks. At the moment, this is a campaign between Israel and the United States. They've asked for assistance in terms of military bases. Keir Starmer said, no, sorry, can't do that. Then changed his mind, said, yes, I can. Word on the street is Donald Trump phoned him up and had a right old, go and said, mate, really? Really? Look at what we're getting rid of here. Look at what we're trying to do. But in terms of the military side of it, what would be your view if you thought we were going to get physically involved in this campaign in Iran? John is in Cornwall. What have you got for us, John? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you.
Hi.
Yes, I mean, it's terrible what's happening. There's no good side to any of it. But the thing that worries me most is the thing that is missed is that I believe exists, and that is that Donald Trump and America are scared stiff, terrified of Putin. Because when Donald Trump got elected, he said he would end the war in Ukraine in a week. Mm-hmm. It's still going on. Now, please, the only people that really suffer are the people at the bottom. And what worries me is the more countries that get involved or are blackmailed into being involved, they open themselves up to danger. I mean, how would, with what's happening now, and I do believe that, America, Trump, I think that they're scared stiff, terrified of Putin.
Why are they scared stiff of Putin?
Because if you look at what's happening now with they're saying about all these oil prices going to go through the roof. That isn't going to affect Russia or China.
Yep.
Or any of that side. They will benefit from it. And the point is this, that, the likes of war, the only people that suffer in any war are people at the bottom, whether they have to pay for it or they suffer it. But if you consider, should we say, what happened after Iraq, it went on for years. I mean, it's not going to be good for any country that's involved in it. It's not.
Where does it end?
Pardon?
Where does it end, John?
Where does it end? It ends with hypocrisy ending.
Yeah, but you see, that's what we said, I think it was in the last hour, to try and look for consistency and a lack of hypocrisy or a lack of contradiction in geopolitics is a fool's journey, isn't it?
It is, yes. And if you look, I don't take any sides because I don't agree with any of it really. But anyway, if you look, they said 135 children were killed in Iran. Now, it doesn't matter what the hypocrites say. You cannot justify that.
Well, that figure goes from 18 to 135. Many people have picked up on that. There's even a suggestion that actually it was a misfire of an Iranian weapon that was responsible. But, you know, look, how many times have we been there with these kind of stories, whether it's a hospital or whatever, where one side said, no, it was nothing to do with us. It wasn't even a hospital. It wasn't even a school. You know, the fog of war, as it's often called. John, thank you very much indeed for that. John in Cornwall. Let's get a voice note on Iran from Jason.
Ian, what's going to happen now? Because we've got so many people in this country that are pro-Islam, pro-Islamist. We've got organisations with huge amounts of money and influence which should be banned, shouldn't even be here, and their Prime Minister is too weak to ban them, too weak to stop their influence. They are going to start more and more demonstrations. We're going to have more and more attacks on this country, and Labour will do nothing, absolutely nothing, to protect the majority white Christian population, and our institutions are completely captured by these people. It needs to end.
Well, they've literally got no idea how to address those fundamental issues about social cohesion. And, you know, we can talk about being British, you can talk about people having their own faiths and all the rest of it, but having a kind of core central point of gravity in a country, culturally speaking, I would say is pretty darn crucial. And I know, you know, communities of all different kinds around this country have lived side by side for years, quite peacefully. But side by side is not integration, right? It's literally the antithesis of integration. Yes, we all coexist, but there's not really a central hymn sheet from which we all speak. And I don't think it's too much to ask that we would try and create one. What seems to happen with this government is they have a PhD in compounding the side-by-side nature, and there are loads of organisations that absolutely should be banned, and individuals that should be banned from all over the show. And this government is not, you know, they don't want to go there. You know, this idea, you know, Shabana Mahmood, who has this new initiative which starts today about settled status for asylum seekers, even there was about 36 Labour MPs losing their mind that she should even go there, because they're in the kind of Zach Polanski thing of, you know, no borders. Other than, you know, our representative in the, when I say our, I mean in the Royal, our representative in the seat at the time, Matt Goodwin, who was told he was a stranger because he came from Hertfordshire. Which is a little crucial when the argument that's being had elsewhere is we shouldn't have any borders, just within the UK, apparently, according to the Green Party. John says the reason we don't lock people up, immigrants at the reason we don't lock up immigrants, as you brilliantly suggest, is because there is nowhere to put them. And Mark in Suffolk says, surely Starmer is being gifted a perfect opportunity to stop the boats. As you say, detain everyone. This is a national security threat. Yeah, it is. It literally is. Right now, as of today, because of the weekend specifically, is that nowhere on the agenda? Is no one going, mate? Tonight you might have 600 blokes from Iran show up across the channel. Are you not a little bit, maybe just even a little bit, Keir, a little bit concerned about that? Strange times. 0344 499 1000.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in third place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, what your gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Don says the Iran war will destroy the UK economy. Reeves has us on our knees. This will seal our fate. And there is, what I said at the beginning, that I'd rather we butt it out of this as much as we can. There are some, I think, some international obligations, moral obligations. When you think about what you're trying to wipe out in Iran, I don't think anyone with a sane head would say, no, that's a terrible thing to do. It's clearly not a terrible thing to do. This is a horrific, murderous regime, gone on for flipping decades, and the entire region is driven by the ideology of what was happening with the head honchos in Tehran. So when that is the case, clearly, impulsively, and every instinct in your body says, get rid. That doesn't mean to say there aren't some potential horrific implications of doing that, and I think Don is probably on the same page on that too. Grace is down in London. Grace, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, I have to say, I think it is absolutely catastrophic what's happened, and my reasons for that are that if you look at this history of regime change in the Middle East, it's been a disaster. I mean, what you've just said about the whole region, Saddam Hussein, he was amongst his people, the same with Gaddafi. Of course, the Kurds hated him, but the country functioned, it worked, and at one point we were actually friends with Saddam until it didn't suit us. So we took him out. We wage on the basis that he has weapons of mass destruction. And I've just heard Netanyahu on the news saying that we had to invade Iran because if they get a nuclear weapon, they will annihilate us. Well, the point is, I don't think you can run governments on this kind of if, because we now know
it is a country that wants to, but it is a country that would be quite relaxed about destroying Israel. They're very publicly, that is a kind of an implicit aim in their existence.
Said that, yes, but having said that, personally, I think this is all about oil. Venezuela was about oil. It's the biggest oil producer in Latin America. Iran is a massive oil producer. That's the bottom line of all this. And there is...
Is that so bad? I mean, I remember during the Iraq war, people going, it's just about the oil. And there was a counter-argument to that, Grace, oddly, which was that, well, yeah. I mean, if the oil is the lifeblood of the world, then darn right we want to know who's controlling it.
Yes, but the thing is, I don't think it's a way. We're human beings. We have civilization. Are we just? If we.
But what do we do? What do we do with Iran? Do we just ignore the fact that this regime in the last couple of months has killed 30,000 people for protesting? That is sponsoring Hezbollah, Hamas, and God knows who else.
There are 90 million people in Iran. In Tehran, most people are educated. Outside of Tehran, it is a huge country, and people are not. And so for Donald Trump to say, please now seize your democracy. These people have no history of democracy. Under the Shah, he was an autocrat. It is absurd to think that 90 million people who are different tribal people anyway, it is absurd. I just think that this was not inevitable. They wanted to go in, and the tragedy for all of us, I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about. I agree with you. I think it's going to be very bad for this country on very practical things, oil prices, all that, but the whole safety of the world. And Trump, for me, what a disappointment. All this about with Ukraine. Oh, if I'm in for 2 weeks, that war will stop. Well, it certainly hasn't.
Well, it certainly hasn't. Has he taken us closer? People will debate that. Listen, Grace, thank you. It is a view. Grace down in London, thank you to her. 0344 499 1000. More voices on the way. Plus, we're crossing live to Parliament. The Prime Minister making a speech there, updating MPs. And if anything additional is there, you'll hear it here first on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. One aspect of this, of course, has been the oil price. We know that an oil refinery, Saudi Arabia, was hit today. Those attacks could, of course, affect what it costs to fill up your tank. Let's get a word firstly with Simon Henderson, Director of the Gulf and Energy Policy Programme. Simon, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. I mean, as you know, some would say, well, as sure as night follows day, if that stuff starts to get scarce over there, it will raise the price over here. What's your take on this?
Well, that's a very good prediction, but frankly, we have to take it day by day. For the moment, the issue, as you mentioned, is actual attacks on, in this case, a Saudi oil refinery.
Yeah.
But there's also reluctance by oil traders to send tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, which is the opening to the open sea from the Persian Gulf. And it's through the Strait of Hormuz that 20% of the world's oil goes, which amounts to 40% of the world's internationally traded oil. And for the moment, the main super tankers, the really big ones, which go full out and empty on the way back, and that's probably 10 each way each day, don't appear to be moving, presumably because their insurance companies have said pay an extra high premium, or frankly, more likely, let's just wait and see.
Yeah. And that wait and see could be costly. Is that fair?
Well, you know, if you're if you're not doing your trade and you're leaving it a day or two, you're losing money. Your asset is wasting rather than getting to the customer.
Yeah. What is your sense of this? I mean, we've been through various crises, not always war, but, you know, whether it's trade or other issues that once in a while can affect this clearly key market. Does this feel to you, Simon, instinctively like we're in for the long haul and we're going to inevitably see a knock-on effect to the petrol pump in this country?
That's my major fear at the moment. My anxiety, but I'm prepared to change it day by day in light of circumstances, is that Iran has yet to be defeated, but it has, in a sense, handed down local authority to local commanders. So perhaps there is a Revolutionary Guard captain in the Gulf near the Strait of Hormuz who would see it as his role to fire on tankers which would be moving in one direction or another. And this might be the reason why the United States has been attacking Iranian naval vessels to perhaps stop this.
OK, on that point, Simon, thank you for coming on with us. Really appreciated. Simon Henderson, Director of the Gulf and Energy Policy Programme. Let's speak with Gordon Balmer, Executive Director of the Petrol Retailers Association. Gordon, nice to have you with us again, sir. So what's the word on the street, as it were? Any movement in this inevitable concern that we might be seeing a price hike?
Well, in February, nice to be on with you as well, Ian. In February, prices did go up about a penny a litre, so prices were already starting to increase. It's about sustainability. If there is a sustained high crude price, inevitably it does flow through to the pumps. So it depends how long this is going to last for and what price crude is trending to.
What is your prediction, Gordon? Again, you've seen blips and ups and downs before. If there is an issue, how long does it take to convert to the pump? Are the AA talking about 10 to 12 days? What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. A lot of our members buy on a weekly or fortnightly lagged basis, so it does actually take a while to flow through into the wholesale price. I mean, we've seen crude get up towards $80 a barrel this afternoon from a starting point at the beginning of February of $66 a barrel, so it is increasing.
OK.
But headlines are coming out of the Middle East.
Indeed. Gordon, I've got to step in, only because we're crossing to the Prime Minister in the House of Commons, Keir Starmer.
By the US and Israel. That decision was deliberate. We believe that the best way forward for the region and for the world is a negotiated settlement in which Iran agrees to give up any aspirations to develop a nuclear weapon and ceases its destabilising activity across the region. That has been the long-standing position of successive British governments. President Trump has expressed his disagreement with our decision not to get involved in the initial strikes. But it is my duty to judge what is in Britain's national interest. That is what I've done, and I stand by it. But, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that Iran's outrageous response has become a threat to our people, our interests, and our allies, and it cannot be ignored. Iran has lashed out across the region. They've launched hundreds of missiles and thousands of drones at countries which did not attack them, including the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Iraq, Bahrain and Oman. And overnight, Hezbollah, Iran's proxy in Lebanon, launched attacks on Israel, seeking to escalate the war. Mr. Speaker, there are an estimated 300,000 British citizens in the regions, residents, families on holiday, and those in transit. Iran has hit airports and hotels where British citizens are staying. It is deeply concerning for the whole House and the whole country. And, Mr. Speaker, our armed forces are also being put at risk by Iran's actions. On Saturday, Iran hit a military base in Bahrain with missiles and drones. There were 300 British personnel on the base, some within a few hundred yards of the strike. Last night, a drone hit RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. There were no casualties in this strike. Mr. Speaker, it is important for me to say that our bases in Cyprus are not being used by US bombers. The security of our friends and partners in Cyprus is of critical importance. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to be clear. The strike on RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus was not in response to any decision that we have taken. In our assessment, the drone was launched prior to our announcement. Iran's aggression towards Britain and our interests is long-standing, and that's why we've always ensured that protections for British bases and personnel are at their highest level. Mr. Speaker, it is very clear that the death of the Supreme Leader will not stop Iran from launching these strikes. In fact, their approach is becoming even more reckless and more dangerous to civilians. They are working ruthlessly and deliberately through a plan to strike not only military targets, but also economic targets in the region, with no regard for civilian casualties. That is the situation we face today, and to which we must respond. Mr. Speaker, I've been speaking to our Gulf partners over the weekend. They're outraged by Iran's acts, particularly as they played no part in any strikes, and they've asked us to do more to defend them. Moreover, it is my duty, the highest duty of my office, to protect British lives. That is why we put British jets in the air, Typhoons and F-35s, as part of coordinated defensive operations, which have already successfully intercepted Iranian strikes, including, Mr. Speaker, taking out one drone that was heading towards a coalition base in Iraq, housing UK service personnel. I want to pay tribute to our brilliant servicemen and women, putting themselves in harm's way to keep others safe. And I know the whole House will join me in expressing our gratitude and our respect. But, Mr. Speaker, it is simply not possible to shoot down every Iranian missile and every drone after they've been launched. The only way to stop the threat is to destroy the missiles at source, in their storage depots or at the launchers. The US requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose, because they have the capabilities to do so. Yesterday evening, we took the decision to accept that new request in order to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved. To be clear, the use of British bases is limited to the agreed defensive purposes. We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review. Mr. Speaker, we are not joining the strikes, but we will continue our defensive actions in the region. France and Germany are also prepared to enable US action to destroy Iran's capability to fire missiles and drones from source. I've been in close contact with President Macron and Chancellor Merz in recent days, as well as President Trump and leaders across the region to that end. Mr. Speaker, be in no doubt, the regime in Iran is utterly abhorrent. In January, they murdered thousands of their own people, the full horror of which is still hidden from the world. For decades, they have sought to destabilise the region and export terror around the world. Their proxies in Yemen have targeted British ships in the Red Sea. They facilitated Russia's attacks in Ukraine. The regime's tentacles have even reached these shores, posing a direct threat to Iranian dissidents and to the Jewish community. Over the last year alone, Iran has backed more than 20 potentially lethal attacks on UK soil, each of which, Mr. Speaker, we have foiled. So it's clear the Iranian regime must never be allowed to get their hands on nuclear weapons. That remains the primary aim of the United Kingdom and our allies, including the US. And ultimately, this will have to be achieved at the negotiating table. Mr. Speaker, in this dangerous moment, our first thoughts are with our citizens in the region, friends, family members and constituents. I recognise the deep concern that the situation is causing for those involved and for communities across the country. We're asking all British citizens in the region to register their presence so we can provide the best possible support, and to monitor the Home Office travel advice, which is being regularly updated. Across much of the region, airspace remains closed, and local authorities are advising individuals to shelter in place. The situation on the ground may remain challenging for some time, so we're sending rapid deployment teams to the region to support our British nationals on the ground. And we're in close contact with the travel industry and governments in the region, including with our friends in the UAE, given the concentration of British nationals in that country. And we're looking at all options to support our people. We want to ensure that they can return home as swiftly and safely as possible. The FCDO phone lines are open to provide consular support, and ministers are available to meet MPs to discuss any individual cases. Mr. Speaker, we're also reaching out to communities across the United Kingdom, including Muslim and Jewish community organisations, and we're making sure that sites across the country, including places of worship, have appropriate protective security in place. Mr. Speaker, the situation in the region is developing rapidly, so we will continue to update the House in coming days. Mr. Speaker, I've spoken recently about the toll that global events are taking here at home. They come crashing into our lives with ever greater frequency, hitting our economy, driving up prices on the supermarket shelves or at the pump, dividing communities, bringing anxiety and fear. That's why how we operate on the world stage matters so much. Mr. Speaker, we all remember the mistakes of Iraq, and we have learned those lessons. Any UK actions must always have a lawful basis and a viable, thought-through plan. I say again, we were not involved in the initial strikes on Iran, and we will not join offensive action now. But in the face of Iran's barrage of missiles and drones, we will protect our people in the region and support the collective self-defence of our allies, because that is our duty to the British people. It is the best way to eliminate the urgent threat, to prevent the situation spiralling further, and support a return to diplomacy. It is the best way to protect British interests and British lives. That is what this government is doing, and I commend this statement to the House.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Bednall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I thank the Prime Minister for advance sight of his statement and for the security briefing I received earlier. This is a defining moment for the people of Iran, the wider Middle East and the world order. I know that hundreds of thousands of British people still in the region, many sheltering from drone attacks, are fearful about making it home. I agree with the Prime Minister that everyone in the region should follow FCDO advice and register their presence with the British Embassy. Can the Prime Minister confirm whether he is making contingency plans for a potential evacuation of UK citizens and what stage the operational planning is at? Let me also, Mr. Speaker, pay tribute to our brave service personnel stationed in British bases in the region. I know that this will be an anxious time for them and their families. They all have our support. Mr. Speaker, we stand in solidarity with our allies, including Bahrain, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, who, along with others, have been on the receiving end of unprovoked aggression. On Saturday, our allies, the United States and Israel, took targeted action against the Iranian regime, a regime which for decades has been brutally repressing its own citizens, whose leader had the blood of hundreds of thousands of Iranians on his hands and of countless others around the world killed by Iranian proxies. This regime is the world's foremost sponsor of international terrorism. It seeks to annihilate the world's only Jewish state. It has said so repeatedly, and we should take despots at their word. It is a regime whose apparatchiks chant death to Britain. It has attacked British nationals and conducted multiple plots on British soil, as the head of MI5 has warned. It is manufacturing drones en masse for Russia, drones which are raining down on innocent Ukrainians, and it continues to try to develop nuclear weapons in flagrant violation of international agreement, nuclear weapons which, if obtained, would be an existential threat for this country. The outcome of Ayatollah Khamenei's death will, we hope, be a safer Middle East and a safer world, with the future of Iran back in the hands of the Iranian people. But that outcome is not yet guaranteed. On Saturday, our allies in Canada and Australia immediately backed the action taken by America against this despotic regime in Tehran. And I have made it very clear that the Conservative Party also stands behind America taking this necessary action against state-sponsored terror. But over the weekend, statements from the government and the Prime Minister provided no such clarity. It was only last night that the Prime Minister finally told us that the government would allow our allies the use of our own air bases, despite it being obvious that UK interests were under imminent threat. It took Iranian missiles hitting allies in the Gulf before he finally made a decision. And even after that, the Foreign Secretary said this morning that the government has put limits on the actions of our allies operating from our bases. Unbelievably, in his statement today, the Prime Minister still cannot say whether he backs the strikes or not. Today, the President of the United States has taken the extraordinary step of rebuking the Prime Minister publicly, saying he took far too long to grant access. We are told that this dither and delay is because of concerns over international law, but I am afraid that explanation simply does not hold. International law didn't prevent our allies from clearly and unequivocally stating whose side they were on. You don't need international law to say whose side you're on. It has not prevented British governments in the past from supporting strikes which we knew to be right. As the Shadow Attorney General has said, if the doctrines of international law are unable to restrain Iranian terrorism and mass murder, if they tie the hands of democracies while forcing us to stand and watch Iranian atrocities, international law will have failed. It will have become a fundamentally immoral system of law. Why is it that under this Prime Minister, international law always seems to be at odds with our national interest? Why is it that we are giving away? Why is it that we are giving away the Chagos Islands and paying £35 billion for the privilege rather than standing up for our national interest and protecting the crucial military base, which even now our allies are using. We in this House are elected to stand up for Britain's national interest, and where the government is doing the right thing, we will always back them. So let me reiterate our offer that if the government brings forward legislation to fast-track banning the IRGC, we will support them. But let me ask the Prime Minister, what national interest was served by refusing to help our allies for so long, particularly when we so need American support to protect Ukraine's and Europe's security? Are we going to see new UK military capabilities deployed to protect our security partners, our bases, including in Cyprus, and British nationals in the region? And will the Prime Minister ensure the Chancellor uses the Spring Statement tomorrow to set Britain on a clear path to 3% of GDP on defence spending? There is no point wanting action to make the world a safer place, but being too scared to do anything except stand by and watch others. Mr. Speaker, our national interest and national security must be front and centre. The Conservative Party will always work with our allies to make the world a safer place.
Mr. Speaker, she asked about contingency plans for UK nationals, and I can assure her and the House we're working at speed with our partners in the region to take whatever measures we can to make sure that our people can return as safely and as swiftly as possible, and will continue to do so. And I'm happy to update her and the House as we roll out those plans. Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. There were two distinct and separate decisions over the weekend. The first decision was whether or not the United Kingdom should join the US-Israel offensive against Iran. We took the decision that we should not. We should not.
Absolutely right.
The second decision was a separate decision, and actually a separate request from the US, which was whether we should permit the use of bases for the distinct, specific, defensive purpose of collective self-defence of our allies and to protect British lives, which were put at risk by the actions of Iran on Saturday and Sunday. We took the decision that we should do so. I am clear in my mind that any UK action must always have a lawful basis. It must also always have a viable and thought-through plan.
Yes.
And it must be in our national interest.
Yes.
The Leader of the Opposition, I think, is saying she would have joined the initial strikes whether they were lawful or not. I noticed she didn't say the Shadow Attorney General said they would have been lawful, just that the law should be changed.
Yes.
And I think she said they would have joined the initial strikes without regard to whether they had a plan. She was very critical of us not joining sooner. Therefore, it's impossible to have that position without arguing that we should and we could have joined. I fundamentally disagree. Mr. Speaker, I will tell the House why. Where our military personnel take action, putting their lives at risk, it is our duty, my duty, to ensure they have a lawful basis. Yeah. On Saturday, we deployed UK pilots into the sky in the region, and they've been working there ever since. They deserve to know that their actions are lawful and there is a viable, thought-through plan. And I will not countenance committing our military personnel to action which doesn't have a lawful basis. That is not a fair thing to do to our serving personnel. And no UK Prime Minister has ever committed our personnel to action unless it's got a proper lawful basis.
With the Select Committee, Dame Emily Thornbury.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
And that was the statement from the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And, of course, you heard the response there from the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch. What did you extrapolate from that? Well, I can tell you Kevin O'Sullivan's going to be here with Drive in a few moments' time. And absolutely top of the agenda is this discussion. Britain's inclusion, the advice that was given, was it legal? He says he could only go by the legal advice. No other administration ever has committed troops anywhere without such advice. And on it went back and forth. What do you make of what you've just heard from the Prime Minister? I'm sure Kev will be interested in hearing your views this afternoon on Drive, because it is the biggest story in town right now, Kev, and I'm struggling, really, to find one that is any more important than the current one we're discussing.
I just think it's extraordinary, this little man droning on about international law. All the lefties yesterday, all they were going, Zach Polanski, international law's been broken. Look, you've got all-out war in the Middle East for whatever reason. People are dying. British people are dying. Everybody's dying. It's a terrible, terrible thing that is erupting in the Middle East. All-out war. And all these idiots like Starmer, Polanski, Hermer, Corbyn, all they're worried about is, I think the rules have been broken. I think they've broken international law. Forget it. What kind of normal person gives a flying damn, and then he said something else then, about international law? What is international law? It's a joke. Starmer, or rather Trump, has not broken international law, because if you want to attack another country, all you have to do in order to stay within the terms of international law is say, well, we did it for defensive purposes, and then you're okay. So it's all a nonsense. So we will be...
It was interesting, by the way, to watch, for some reason, given that we do this for a living, I found myself watching the United Nations on Saturday. First out the traps were the French. I mean, they were incandescent with rage at what had happened here.
Yeah. Look, the point is, as they say in reality TV, it is what it is. Trump and Israel have